Welcome to Coleman Report Live, and we are here, Lance and Katie, officially 2021. I've locked all the 2020 stuff in a box, in a vault, thrown away the key, buried in the ocean. Let's move on, Lance. What's your outlook for 2021?
You know, I think it's going to be an interesting year. Hopefully by mid-year we'll be back to normal, or whatever the new normal is. And should be a big year for SBA lending, Bob, with the new things that hopefully we're going to get some guidelines on pretty soon, the increase in guarantee percentage and both the 7A and Express program. So I'm hoping for a great year, Bob.
Katie, no banker can be successful unless they've managed through a downturn. You're not a banker per se, but you are certainly covering the banking industry. I think you now have enough knowledge to 20 years from now, when you're old and grizzled, some young pup comes in and goes, let me tell you about 2020.
Yeah, it's certainly a year I didn't expect, but it definitely was interesting, and it's really setting up an interesting tone for 2021. So lots going to happen this year.
I can't wait for Katie 20, 30 years from now when talking to some bride and she's complaining about something, Katie to sit back and go, yeah,
right.
You're worried about the chocolate on the cake. Let me tell you about that.
Unfortunately for you and I, Bob, we remember 83, 91, 2001, 2009.
Yeah. Well, the new normal is, as Mark Cuban says, you grow up, you live in a world you didn't grow up with. You're not going to like it. And my statement applies. You're going to work in a world you don't start in, and you're not going to like it. So, but we will do the best we can. Hey, here are the certificates. Start off the new year, download those, keep track of those. Let's go to the poll. Number one, when do you expect the SBA to issue forgiveness?
I know when they're
Notice, Lance, I'm starting on a positive note. I'm saying they are going to issue it.
They are going to issue it. I don't think after the inauguration. To be honest with you, Bob, I'm falling in that next week category as well.
Now, tell me about the 10 days, Katie. What's that all about?
Well, the legislation did give a certain amount of days for them to get back to us about some of these guidance issues. Really, we don't have a lot of details on whether it was calendar days or business days, but like we were talking before the show, I think normally they distinguish and they'll say whether it's business days if that's the case. Otherwise, it's by default usually calendar days. So I would really guess that most of this is probably going to come in next week with some of the PPP-related guidance that's not forgiveness related. Possibly this week. In fact, probably this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, disagree with Lance. Lance, I'm going to vote this week. I think they have all the information. This is not a shock. They've been working on it. Hopefully I am right.
I hope so too, Bob.
All right. Number two, can a PPP loan be denied to a borrower in a bankruptcy proceeding?
Yeah, Bob, I would jump in there, but I think we're going to talk about this a little more.
For those who voted no, what is the rationale for voting no, Lance?
Well, I think that it did appear in the bill that there were going to be some circumstances where a borrower who had a bankruptcy could, in fact, get a PPP loan. But then breaking news, I think you can deny a borrower who has a bankruptcy. I really look forward to SBA's guidance on this, but I think Katie has something to share with us in a bit that might help that.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. But yeah, the answer is yes. Remember, the lender is not an order taker. The lender has a lot of say in this. If for some reason you don't want to do a loan, you don't have to do the loan. And Absolutely. I talked to lenders who have been bullied. They've been sued because they're alleging that they're not doing their fiduciary duty on behalf of the government, that the lender doesn't want to make that loan. They're not charged with the task of making the loan. They could say, no, we're going to walk away. Number 3, do you feel funding women's business centers is a good allocation of SBA's resources? Talk about a softball question, Katie.
That doesn't really surprise me. The reason we're asking this question is because the SBA just recently opened another 20 women's small business facilities across the country. So it is growing exponentially. That's the largest growth we've seen ever since this women's small business program has really been started. So it is very large right now, and it's growing, and it's gaining a lot of momentum.
Katie, what is the issue with this? Number one, why are we funding? I'd like to know 2 things from you. Number 1, why do we feel we need to have a separate program to fund just women-owned businesses? And number 2, do you have the stats at your fingertips on how women-owned businesses are performing these days?
I believe I sent it to Joseph, so hopefully we have a slide on that. But we might be skipping ahead a little bit. Yeah, so women-owned businesses do fairly well. They're really 1 in 5 firms have revenues over 1 million are women-owned, and 4.2% of women-owned businesses have revenue over 1 million. So it's they perform fairly well. You see a lot of minorities in this group as well. The women minority kind of overlaps in that case. So I've got the stats up here. There's not a whole lot. Unfortunately, numbers haven't really been updated too much over 2020 as everything's kind of in flux. So I believe we'll probably get to some more substantial statistics here toward the end of the pandemic as things start to settle down. But women-owned businesses account for 11.6 million firms nationally. They employ 9 million people and generate over $1.7 trillion in sales annually. So they are very impactful on our economy, and I think the SBA recognizes that and wants to encourage that because representation-wise, women-owned businesses is significantly smaller than that male-owned business group, but it is a group that does perform fairly well.
Yeah, they perform well. I'm talking to our friend AQ, who's the district director of Inland Empire, Southern California office, saying that bucket of women-owned businesses, minority women-owned businesses, is growing exponentially. And if you think about it, it makes sense in terms of overall demographics. The first generation immigrants come in, and the best opportunities they have are starting businesses. And you see a lot of that, Lance. I know you're a former SBDC person, and you see a lot of immigrants taking advantage of these programs to create jobs.
Bob, I actually wrote an article about women-owned businesses back in 1998 about the significance and growth in ownership by women-owned businesses. It certainly is there, and there is a network of small business development centers that provide support, but the women business centers, for instance, in Arkansas, I think there's 8 SBDC offices and 1 women business center office.
So I know I have no issue with SBA allocating resources to specific targets such as this. We talk a lot about training, a lot of mentoring, and it's very important, I think, for other business owners to network with like-minded individuals to say, hey, I'm not doing this alone, and to be able to share and swap. I know in my industry, I have a peer group of industry professionals that I share with, and we're different industries, but we're all in the publishing business. And so this is very valuable to share what works and what doesn't work. Let's go back to the 11th Circuit. And what the issue on this, Katie, is that some borrowers will say, hey, we're eligible. Just because we're in bankruptcy doesn't mean that we can't get a loan. And the court said, if you're in bankruptcy, we need to get involved, and we want SBA's approval before you get a loan. So we're saying you're not ineligible, but you have to have SBA's approval, correct?
Well, the SBA had said that bankruptcy debtors were ineligible based on the CARES Act. And in the CARES Act, they really looked through that and they said, yes, that's okay for the SBA to say. But in this new Consolidated Appropriations Act, they're now actually saying, like, very specifically, the section 364 of the Bankruptcy Code is being adjusted so that small businesses that are in bankruptcy will be eligible. Now it's still up to the lender to determine whether or not they're going to accept that, but it will make them eligible for sure. So that's the difference really there.
Yeah, but remember, SBA needs to sign off. And hey, this is Katie. What is the source of this? The top small business trends for 2021. Who's our source for this slide? Do we know?
Yeah, the SBA actually published this as one of their resources. So we were just talking about small business resources. The SBA publishes, a few articles a week on ways small businesses can keep up with the changing times and things like that. So this last week, they were really discussing what are some trends that they see continuing throughout 2021. Some trends that we started to see in late 2020 as well. So the top 4 that they had listed were a continued prioritization of e-commerce. I don't see that going away anytime soon. So it's definitely something a small business would want to jump on and make sure they have some way of selling their products online or getting at least contacted online. I can't tell you how many small businesses before the pandemic didn't even have websites, and that was really unfortunate because trying to contact them and find out if they were open and things like that was very difficult. I think a lot of them have jumped on that, and they're now have at least websites or a Facebook page or something like that. But that's going to be a trend continuing into 2021 and probably for a long time afterwards. Second one was alternative payment options. I believe that's probably going to continue as well. You're seeing a lot of people using cards. You're seeing a lot of pay and pick up kind of situations where you'll pay ahead of time and go pick up your groceries and things like that. That's expected to continue for quite a while. Remote work is expected to persist. We've done a couple polls on that. It seems like it's at least maybe half of the people on our show have said that they're expecting to continue doing remote work for at least another half year. But what really they were saying in this particular article that I was basing this off of and the studies they've looked at is a lot of small businesses are now competing for labor. And if you can have one business where you're working from home and setting your own hours and another one where that's not possible, you're competing for that labor, and that might be more difficult going on. So you need to consider whether remote work is possible in your industry and really address that. And finally, virtual services will continue to be in high demand. That's very similar to the e-commerce situation. I believe a lot of people want to be able to pick up the phone or do a Zoom chat to handle things very quickly instead of waiting in line at a business and things like that. So those are the things that they said for sure they expect to see in 2021.
Very good. We have a number of questions left over from last week. We'll go to those. Lance, you wanted to interject something?
I was just saying, Bob, alternative payment options is a great thing for small businesses, and we've seen this evolve over time. But, Bob, a lot of people don't remember I had a small business from 1992 to about the year 1999, and I used to have to accept checks, Bob, and I still have a bank bag full of hot checks. That was a cost for my business. These alternative payment options take that problem away, immediate payment to small businesses, and these are all key things. I think this pandemic has changed the way small business will operate forever.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, there would be winners and losers as there is in every cycle. And The winners will figure out how to operate and make money and employ people in our new environment. I have a number of questions before let's go to the question. This is from Levi. Have you heard anything regarding accounting or attorneys getting paid on PPP? The answer on that is it's been resolved in the courts, is that unless there was a prior agreement with that lender, you're not going to get that agent fees if you're an accountant or an attorney. The analogy I use is I go out there and I get a lawnmower and I mow the lawns, mow the branches lawn and send an invoice. They have no obligation to pay that unless I have a prior agreement with that. Is that your understanding, Lance?
It is, Bob.
Interesting question from Russell. Loan size. We've sort of danced around that. What's going to happen with loan sizes, Lance?
Well, I think there's a possibility because with the new 90% guarantee that is proposed, that would make it difficult to get a 90% guarantee on a $5 million loan. So we may see the total guaranteed amount go up and the total loan size go up, but I don't know that. And that's why we're excited to receive the guidance from SBA as to how they plan to implement the bill.
Russell wants to know, Jim wants to know, when will they open portals? We think that it will open up at the same time. That has not been an issue in the past, has it, Lance?
No, they're ready for it. They just have to get the new guidance out.
And Steve wants to know, what is the processing fee structure to be paid to banks on the new round of PPP loans? The same as PPP1, and it's in the regulations.
Yeah, it's basically the same except on smaller PPP loans.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, there's a slight difference for a little bit higher compensation on those really small dollar PPP loans.
And Mary has called me into the principal's office. Not really, but we love Mary out of Texas. Just a reminder that the SBDCs also serve all small businesses, including those owned by women, veterans, ethnic minorities, and underserved markets. Yes, Mary, you're absolutely correct. We were not.
Absolutely.
And Happy New Year to you, Mary. Janelle wants to know, if a business in bankruptcy is denied by their lender, do you recommend a different lender as a best course of action? Lance?
If they're denied by one for a PPP loan because of a bankruptcy, yeah, go to another lender. I tell all my small businesses, I get disappointed at times, or not disappointed. Somebody will bring a idea for a startup business in for an SBA loan, and you usually will want to have more than one alternative for your financing possibility because, you put all your eggs in one basket, you may not end up getting that loan. So same thing with PPP. If somebody denies you because of a bankruptcy, it doesn't mean you can't walk across the street and try another PPP lender.
Robert has a question, which is, do you have any recommendations? He's crying for help. On what do you do if you have, I've submitted the loans. They're now over 120 days on forgiveness. We've emailed everything. We've emailed the general PP and we've emailed the help addresses, and all we get is a generic response. What's the next step we should do, Lance?
I really don't know. He's doing all the correct things. I do think the sheer volume of forgiveness applications has probably gotten SBA a little behind. I would want to make sure I look in the PPP forgiveness portal and look at the status of those loans that have not been paid yet. But you're doing all the right things. I don't know another email address or magic phone number to help the process along.
Yeah, just be persistent. That's the answer there. We'll hold off on our January edition of our PPP forgiveness guide until we get the forgiveness application, which we expect will happen, well, definitely within the next weeks. So be aware of that, and then we'll up that on that. And finally, Katie's finishing up, and we'll get this. This are top 10 things that your C-suite and board of directors needs to know, and that's our new newsletter. Take advantage of that. We've gotten some very positive feedback on that, and you can distribute it unlimited to your whole team. With that, Lance, Happy New Year. Good to see you. Katie, Happy New Year. Good New Year, everyone, and thank you for joining us, Coleman Report Live, for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur.
Have a great afternoon.